Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Improving Your Money Habits presentation. My name is Migdalia Gomez. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union, and I'm excited to chat with you for the next 30, 40 minutes, maybe hour, just to talk about money habits and what we can do to improve them. Our presentation is going to be recorded, so you'll have access to it. But before we get started, just wanted to do some quick little housekeeping so that you have an understanding of how today's session is going to work. We have gone ahead and muted folks just so it's easier. We all know how it is nowadays. A lot of things possibly happening in the background. I do have a dog, so I apologize in advance if he barks. I think he's sleeping right now, but as we know, life nowadays may have some interruptions here and there. So we have muted folks to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to engage with us wherever you're joining us from. We are going to use the questions panel for today's session. So please let me know, let's test it out and let me know where are you joining us from today. You can just let me know in the questions panel. That will help a couple of things. It's gonna help me know that you can hear me, which is always good. Don't wanna accidentally be muted and not know. And it also helps me know where exactly folks are joining us from. So I see a lot of folks that are joining from DFCI in Boston. So thank you for letting me know. And this is exactly how you'll submit questions throughout today's presentation. So if there's anything at any point that I can clarify, let me know. Today's session is about you. It's about giving you some tools and giving you resources. So if there's a question that you have and maybe I don't touch upon it or something I can clarify, please feel free. I am a resource to you. And you'll also have my contact information. You'll get an email with the presentation, with the recording, with the slides, and with some resources. So if at any point there's anything we can do to help, please feel free to reach out. And we will also send out a workshop survey because we're always trying to improve what we are doing here at the credit union. And some of you may not be familiar who we are at the Harvard University Employees Credit Union. So I'll give you a really quick intro as to who we are. We are Harvard's not-for-profit financial institution. We are a financial co-op, meaning that we really are focused on the well-being of our entire community, which includes all of you at DFCI and those in your households as well. We do the same as a bank in the same sense that we have the same products. We have mortgages, car loans, student loans, RV loans, and boat loans are new to us as well. Credit cards, student refi, checking, you name it, we do it. The big difference, though, is that we specifically help and work with the Harvard affiliated community. So we're able to do a lot more to customize products, services, such as we do a great job with international members because of our community. And we also are available to help folks, as would be any other financial institution, remotely. The closest location to DFCI is at the School of Public Health, but right now that is closed. But as I mentioned before, everything can be done remotely. That is all that I will say about the credit union, but if you do have any additional questions, I welcome you to visit our website or just reach out and we would be glad to help. Throughout today's presentation, I will be dropping a couple of different links on the chat. If something doesn't work or if you have questions, as always, just let me know. So what exactly are we going to talk about? Where is this presentation coming from? So today's presentation, we actually created it in partnership with GreenPath Financial Wellness, and you'll hear a lot about them throughout today's session and at the end as well. They are not-for-profit that helps us when it comes to providing one-on-one financial counseling. As much as I love what I do, I'm just not able to do the counseling for all of our members. So we have worked with these great partners over at GreenPath. So if at any point you want to have someone review your credit and that will not impact your credit score, or maybe you want to talk about your budget or talk about federal student loans, that is a free service that's available to all of you here and to those in your household. And that is available because we pay for it, so it's free to use. So I know people sometimes hear free and they're like, why is it free? It's free because we pay for it for you. And it's available to you, anyone in your household, and they're accredited credit counselors, they're financial counselors, they do a great job with different resources, and they have a behavioral scientist on staff, which is really important because today's presentation is all about the mental piece. Why do we spend how much we spend? Why do we save the way we save? And I want to say there's no judgment here. We're not here to judge ourselves and feel bad. No. We are who we are. We're just here to understand how can we use some of these mental tricks to really work in our favor. And for those things that we do that we're not as happy about, well, okay, let's see how we can switch some things around so that our money personality is aligned with what our financial goals will be. But that presentation, a lot of it did come from our friends over at GreenPath. They do the science of the behavioral economics, so that we didn't. So we pulled a lot from today's presentation, and that, throughout today's presentation, I'll give examples, but I also want to hear from you. So if you have any examples, feel free to put them in the chat. I will ask questions throughout, and I really do hope that you can share, because we all can learn from each other. One of the first things I'm going to start off with is giving you a money quiz. How many of us don't, most of us love a good quiz, get to know your personality quiz. So I just put one in the chat. This one is specifically knowing your money personality, and I'm going to talk about all of these shortly. Feel free to just do this. Now, as I'm speaking, I will not get offended. I know time is precious, so if you can do this, take this really short quiz as I'm talking about it, that will help you see what your money personality is. And this is just one model. There are many that are out there. I tend to like this one because of the simplicity of it. And it also just gives you some really good advice based off of what money personality you may have. So let's talk about what the 4 buckets are. There are 4 different buckets, and it doesn't mean that you're 100% one. You could be part money avoidance, part money vigilant. It also it changes. I think as we age, as different lifestyle changes may occur, our money personalities may change. And again, that's very similar to most of our other personality traits as well. Life circumstances, we evolve, we change. And as I kept saying at the beginning, this is not a judgment that if I'm money avoidant, this is bad. No, 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 no. These are just facts. These are not good or bad. So I'm going to just lay them all out. I think it's easier to start seeing them all. You have someone who could be a money avoidant. That one's sort of a little bit self-explanatory. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. One of the things that you can do if you fall under that bucket is putting time on your calendar, or essentially scheduling when you're going to work on your finances. Attending a session such as this one, that's a great way if you're more on the money avoidance side, to just put something on your calendar and say, okay, I don't really want to deal with this, but I know I have to, so let me just schedule it. Some of the things you can do, and if you haven't, and actually let me back up, I would say one of the things that I would recommend as you're going through today's presentation is grab a piece of paper, grab a piece of pen, pencil, whatever you'd like to write, or do a notes on your phone, and start a list of some things that you could do based off of the different pieces that I will mention today. That way, at the end of today's presentation, you actually have a list of action items that you can move forward with. One of them being, if you are a money avoidance person, or even if you're not, this could help anyone, is reach out, if you haven't already, contact the retirement provider for DFCI and maybe set up a retirement consultation. This is something that, depending on who your retirement provider is, typically it is free. It's included as part of the business partnership that DFCI has with that provider, where you can just, I know for us at Harvard, we have TIA, and what they'll do is they'll just look at your account, they'll have a conversation with you, and it's a great thing to do if you've never done it before. We have a couple of articles on our blog on questions to come prepared to ask, but it's a really good thing. It's a really simple thing. So if you haven't done something like that, that's something you can schedule. You can also schedule to do a free credit report review, which you can do through GreenPath. If you're a money worshiper, this essentially means that you have a belief that money is going to ultimately make things better. And to a degree, I think most of us would agree that yes, it does help. We're not saying that it doesn't. Money worship tends to go a little bit more on the other side. So for someone who is a money worshiper, some of the things that they could do is essentially look at where their budget is going, looking at where their money is going, and does it align with their values? Sometimes it may not necessarily. And we'll talk more about how we can switch that upcoming slides. Then you have money status, and that is someone who may say, you know what, a brand name X, whatever that could be, means that my worth is higher. So I may choose to spend more money on a label versus putting some of that money maybe aside towards savings, or maybe when it doesn't make sense necessarily to spend the money on that label. Maybe it's, and this is going to be, a little bit of a silly example, but I do want to get the point across. Maybe I'm going to spend $50 or $100, choose an amount that you think is too high on a notebook. And all I do for that notebook is just have it sitting out. Like I'm not using, it's not a notebook that I'm writing. There's no point necessarily for me to spend that much money on that notebook. That could be an opportunity for me to look and say, why did I spend so much money on X item? Maybe I can put that money towards something else. And then money vigilance, which tends to sound like the better one. You're like, oh, that person is frugal and focused on saving. Again, these all have pros and cons. When you take the money personality quiz, it'll give you much more details. But the money vigilant, that may be that you're over saving, which may sound like a weird thing. Like can you ever save too much? If you are missing out on experiences and if you're not enjoying life, then yes, in that sense, you could be over saving. If I am choosing to put everything that I have in savings, and maybe, there are times that we may do that during a short term, but really if this is a habitual thing, I may be missing out on opportunities to travel, and travel may be important to me, or opportunities to spend time with family and friends because I'm choosing to save. So maybe I'm saving, but I'm unhappy. And that is important when it comes to money. Money is meant to be a tool. It is meant to help us with joy. It's meant to help us live the life that we want. And that's why all of these different personalities are going to provide context as to what can we do to really have money be a tool and not have it be something that is at the center of our lives. And there are so many different things that are going to influence our money personalities. We're not going to get into these, but we want to address them because as we go on to improving our money habits, we may, especially if you're speaking with family and friends, we all know people have different values. They have different things that are tempting them with advertisings, or there are different even social expectations within families or friends. And all of these are going to influence our money personality, and knowing that is going to make a difference. I'll speak a little bit, I'll give examples throughout, I'll use myself just to put some context. For me, one of the ones is that affects my money personality is the social factors within my family. I'm a first generation individual, and I specifically, because I'm a first gen and I have been more financially successful than those and others in my immediate household, I tend to feel like this pressure that, oh, I have to help everyone. But in that piece of helping everyone else, then I could be depriving myself of experiences. So that is something that I have to be hyper aware of, and also allow others to also chip in and give others the tool. So that impacts my money personality, and it's something I go back constantly. This weekend, for example, I was out with my brother, and he offered to pay, and I was just like, oh, but does he have money to pay? Is he going to be okay? And I was like, wait, no, he offered. I know he's okay. He can pay. And that may sound like a good thing, but who knows? Maybe I'm building my debt to help others, when in reality, that could be something I could be avoiding by working on my money personality. So we're going to now switch and talk a little bit about how we can really use those money personalities to essentially help us reach our financial goals. But what are those financial goals? So for those of you that hopefully have that pen and paper nearby, or have that notepad open or notes open on your phone, let's take a moment to define a financial goal, because it's always good. We want to improve our money habits, but what are we working towards? So let's take a minute, and I apologize in advance. There is going to be a little bit of awkward silence. I don't have music nearby that I can play on my phone for you, but we are going to take a moment to just write a financial goal that you have. And let's, make it a little bit easier. Let's say, what is a financial goal that you have by the end of 2021? So it is currently August, which is hard to think about, but what is a financial goal that you would like to reach by the end of this year? So by December 31st of 2021, what is one financial goal that you would like to reach? You don't have to share this, but for those of you that would like to, you're more than welcome to. But again, what is a financial goal that you would like to reach by the end of this year? The reason that I'm asking folks to take a moment to write down the financial goal, most people that are financially successful aren't the ones that are necessarily earning the most. They're not necessarily the ones that are saving the most. They're the ones that have a plan. And in order for us to improve our money habits, we're going to go through a couple different scenarios today, but it's helpful to have something that we're working towards. For the purpose of today's example, I'm going to say that that my financial goal is to save $3,000 by the end of the year for travel. If that is a financial goal that I have, as I'm going through all these different examples of money behaviors, I'm going to give different examples, and you would want to take note of what of those examples are applicable or can you put in place to reach your specific financial goal that you have by the end of 2021. Because our goal today, during today's session, yes, is to learn about these, but it's also to walk away with a list of things that we can actually do to move forward in that direction. So what are some of the things that we can do? Well, all of these, we're going to talk a little bit about what the behavior is, and then how are some things we can address. One of them is pre-commitment, and it's essentially putting time on our calendars. It's saying, I am going to do X before it happens. So so essentially to avoid having life pass us by. As I said, we're already in August, and it sort of flew by. So what are some things that we could do if my financial goal is to have money saved by the end of the year? Well, what can I do to get there using pre-commitment? One of the things that I could do, which I mentioned earlier, is scheduling time to work on your finances. So maybe that is for me sitting down and looking for savings vehicles. Where do I want to put this money? When, how do I want the funds to be put in? Am I going to auto save? If for some of us, our financial goal is to reduce spending so that we have more money towards saving, maybe that means using cash instead of credit. For some individuals, using cash, you tend to spend less because you only spend what's physically you have available. So what the cash or envelope method is. I tend to like this a lot when we go out, and now especially that we're able to go out a little bit more to eat with friends and family. If I have taken, especially if you go out in a group and people are splitting checks, I just find it easier. And I know with Zelle and with other apps, it's become much easier to you can Venmo, you can send the individual money, but something about having the cash and knowing, okay, I took $50 out, I'm going to spend $50, and then be able to just give $50 towards the check. It's done. That's what I wanted to spend. I'm less likely to spend more because I have already committed to spending that amount in advance. Goal gradient is another that's really popular, and I'm not sure about you, but sometimes when we have a big goal, I like, let's look at our to-do list. When there's a lot on the list, it can be overwhelming, and especially when it comes to emergency fund. This is one that we hear a lot about. Emergency fund, ideally, you want to have 3 to 6 months of expenses. I'm not sure about you, but 3 to 6 months of expenses is a lot of money for me. And it's a number that I'm going to use simple math, and let's say here it's 10,000. To go from $0 to 10,000, that is not only overwhelming, but it can essentially make me not want to even attempt it. So one of the things that we recommend when it comes to money tips and the behavioral science behind all of it is to break it down into smaller goals. Goal gradient, this is very common with when folks write papers, they start with an outline first. When folks are, even in our homes, when we're cleaning, you don't necessarily make a mess. You're like, okay, I'm going to start with this room first. I'm going to start with this corner. It's really breaking it into smaller pieces. For any runners that we have, most people don't start and just run a marathon. No, there are a lot of different training pieces out there that will tell you start first with a mile, work your way up, do a 5K, 10K, etc. So when it comes to building that emergency fund specifically, if I'm trying to save 10,000, I might say, okay, that's a lot of money, but I think I could do 250 a month. So once I get to that, start doing that 250, then I'm going to make my annual goal 3,000. Then I can see progress. And that is why goal gradient tends to be beneficial for most of us. When we start to see progress, we are more likely to stay on track. If my goal is to save $10,000 and I have $100 saved, that's a huge gap. I'm more likely to just say, I'm going to give up. What's the point? If I decide, let's go back to our goals for this year. If I decide that I want to save $3,000 by the end of the year, but I'm going to first say, you know what, I'm going to do my best to save, excuse me, I'm going to do my best to try to save $300 every pay period. That, once I have that 300, I can say, okay, I'm going to try to get to 1,000. Once I get to 1,000, oh, check that off. I reached that. Okay, next I'm going to try to get to 1,500. Next, I'll try to get to the 2,000. So slowly I'm seeing progress and I'm more likely to stay on track. And this one is called planning fallacy. So I'm going to ask folks in the chat, have you ever, you can say yes or no, have you ever had a to-do list and thought you were going to get through everything? And this is really especially during the weekend, and then the weekend's over and you're like, oops, I didn't get through most of my list. Any of you? Or just say, oh yeah, it'll just take me 10 minutes. Anyone? Yeah, I see a couple of folks. All the time. Yep. That is me. Yes. Yep. Yep. That actually has become a little bit of a joke amongst my friends. They're like, how do you think you're going to get all this done? I'm like, I'll do it. Daily. Exactly. So planning fallacy, it's underestimating how long it's going to take us to complete a task. And this, again, this is one, it is very dear to my heart. I go through this constantly. So when it comes to our finances, a couple of ways that we do this is sometimes with credit card balance. So if you are an individual that has debt with one credit card, let's say you have $10,000 that you owe to credit card A, you may choose to do a credit card balance transfer, which means taking the debt that you have from credit card A and bringing it to credit card B. Usually the benefit of doing that is that you'll get a lower introductory rate or balance transfer rate of either 0% or something relatively small, so that you're not paying that much interest if you were to keep the balance on credit card A. There is typically a balance transfer fee that's associated with it. Now, with most of us, we assume that in that year, we'll be able to pay off that debt and be done with it. Unfortunately, life happens and other things may come up and we may use the credit card for something else, or we may say, oh yes, I'll definitely be able to pay that $10,000 off in a year. I'm going to put that money, every month I'm going to put $800, $833 into that. But then vacation comes up, or something, a gift needs to be given, and you're like, oh, I'll just do 500 this month. Oh, you know what? I'll just do 200. I'll pay it next month. So one of the things to do when it comes to credit card balance transfer or any debt repayment, if that is one of your financial goals, or even savings, is do the math beforehand. So really put the time to do the math and say, okay, if I'm trying to pay off, I'm going to stick to the 10,000. Trying to pay off 10,000 in a year, I need to pay $833.33 each month. So one step is to calculate it and then set up automatic monthly payments so you don't have to think about it. And then the other one, which is the harder one, is not adding additional debt. And this is the one that typically will take a little bit more work towards. And this is where it's not a good or bad, it's about knowing our behavior. So if it is harder for you to not add additional debt and you're paying $800 a month, then maybe instead of paying $800, you're paying $700 a month and taking that additional $100 to cover your other expenses so that you're not adding on additional debt. Even if it's going to take longer, as long as the progress is there, most of us are going to stick to it. But the challenge becomes when we set up goals for ourselves using, that planning fallacy and not adjusting. And adjusting our goals is success. It is important to do, and it isn't something to be ashamed of. It is something that is necessary. And this is in your day-to-day for anyone that has been in a situation that you're trying to pay off debt, but you see yourself getting back to debt. Recommendation is to look at your budget. GreenPath can help with that. They can help you with that as well. But look at your budget and see, do I need to just put down a little bit less towards debt right now to pay off my other expenses so I'm not adding on additional debt? And another piece would be having that emergency savings so that you don't have to put on additional debt. Okay, the next one that we're going to cover is decision paralysis. In the chat, please let me know, have you ever, feel free to give an example. I can give you one, but what has been something that you have made no decision because there were so many options that you were overwhelmed? I always think about, this may sound silly, but going food shopping and specifically buying potato chips, there are so many different options that sometimes I just choose the one that I always go to. Not because I don't want to try the others, but because it's so overwhelming because there's so many different options when you go buy potato chips. I mean, you can say it could be, I keep thinking it's lunchtime, so I'm thinking about food, but whether it's salad dressing, whether it's cereal, like there's so many different options that sometimes we just don't make a decision. We just don't choose anything else because there's so many options that it's hard to choose one. Yep, as someone wrote in that they find themselves doing that with the littlest things. Yes, I definitely, it happens with a lot, and then we don't make a decision, and then it's just like, oh, okay. I know sometimes with greeting cards, even like there's so many different greeting cards, and it's just like, oh, there's anything. It's like so many overwhelming. Watching Netflix or Hulu or any of our different streaming services, that's one. There's so many things to watch, but I sometimes find myself watching the same show over and over again. So what are some things that we can do to help prevent this? When it comes to financial well-being, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they have this is a chart that you're seeing now. They say that someone that's doing financially well or someone that is in a good financial situation, they have the ability to have present security. They have the ability to have future security, present freedom of choice, and future freedom of choice. This means that some of the things that we could do to tackle this when it comes to decision paralysis, for the present security, control over your day-to-day, month-to-month finances. For some of us, this may mean setting up a budget. A budget is one of those things we know we need to do it. There's so many different apps out there. You could also do a document. You could do an Excel sheet. You can do pen and paper. There's so many ways to have a budget, but sometimes there's so many choices that we don't make any. So if you do have that list of next steps, if you fall under that category, that could be one of the things that you can work on. For your financial goal that you wrote down that you want to reach by the end of the year, maybe you're trying to save or pay something off, but there are so many different products that are available. That could be something that you could do, is do the research to try to find what product would be best to meet that goal. For future security, the capacity to absorb a financial shock, that is another way of saying having emergency funds. So if you haven't put time into determining how much you need an emergency fund, or haven't really thought out where to put the emergency fund, one thing to say, wouldn't have it in your checking account. I wouldn't have it somewhere that it's easily accessible, because you really want to have that money put aside for emergencies. And if it's too accessible, you can get to it quickly. But if you haven't, that is something you can address. It's okay, I'm going to sit down this weekend planning, decision paralysis, and some of these will combine. So let's set a schedule to talk about or research, where am I going to put that emergency fund? How much am I going to save? The freedom of choice, the financial freedom to make choices to enjoy life. This is a good one to equate with credit score. Having a good credit score is going to give you more options, more freedom to choose a company that can offer you a lower rate. So if you have not had your credit report reviewed, or if you haven't pulled your credit report, there are 3 bureaus: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And decision paralysis, like, oh, there's so many. I know I have to do it. I know that, not sure which one to start with. This is a great thing you could do. You can pull all 3 for free. It does not impact your credit score. I'm going to put it in the, sorry, I want to make sure I stop so I can type it in. I just put it in the chat. You can go to annualcreditreport.com and pull your credit report. That's something that you can do to work towards that present freedom of choice. And then future, on track to meet your financial goals. I mentioned this one earlier, and this is another opportunity, especially when it comes to retirement options. Sometimes we have, depending on your employer, you may have a lot of options within DFCI for retirement, or even if it's not so much where to put the funds, but which allocation, what type of portfolio to have, that we may not give the time that it needs, because there again, so many options. So that could be something that you can work on, is looking up to see what retirement webinars or online information can you find, and then setting up a time to speak to someone who can give you that one-on-one assistance to help you meet those financial goals. Tunneling. This is one that is very common, and this is one that can be very costly. Tunneling is when we have an emergency comes up and you're just focused on solving it and not necessarily comparing all the options available to you. So let's say, for example, I had a car emergency, my car broke down, and I need to get my car fixed. Because at that moment I need to get my car fixed, I may just choose to just send it to any mechanic, not get multiple quotes, may choose not to do my own research on Google so that I have a better understanding of what the cost of repair could be. And I'm just so focused on getting the car fixed that I may end up spending more money than I need to. Some things to do to prevent tunneling is stopping and thinking, okay, what is my actual timeline? Whether that it, for some individuals, I used to work in a financial aid office, and we had a lot of students the parents and the students would come in, they would have to pay their tuition bill, and they would just focus on paying the tuition bill and not necessarily think, well, what is the best rate I can get? And, we would remind them, it's like, you have a month, you have a month and a half, you have 2 weeks, like you have time, like taking that time and doing that research, looking at different options. That's a really important one, is comparing options, because someone might think that a rate right now of a car loan at 4% is a good rate, but it's really not, because you can get a much lower car rate. But if a 4% sounds good, especially if you've had a car loan in the past when it was higher, you might think, oh, 4%, that's great. But not knowing another option, you don't have basis of comparison. And then the other one is talking to someone. Knowing who to talk to is important. As a financial institution that is really meant to be a benefit for our community, if you ever have a question, you're more than welcome to contact our support center, come into one of our branches. Even if if that product isn't a product that we offer, we're going to give you good advice. We're here to help, but definitely, or speak with friends. I will say, be mindful what friend you're speaking to. Sometimes family members mean well, but they may not be giving the best advice. I think of my dad, and it's funny, there's a NerdWallet commercial of a dad that was giving his daughter not really good advice, but it wasn't, not his fault. He just didn't know any better. So you just have to be careful who you speak to. You don't want to speak to someone who may not necessarily have the best advice to give. So talking to someone, who can provide good advice. Mental accounting. This is one that I have seen very often. So I'm going to go back to the chat and I'm going to ask you, have you ever treated money differently depending where it came from? This could be like a refund. Like if you get a refund, do you sort of treat yourself? It's like, oh, it's not, it's free money, or vacation, or birthday money, or gifts. Ever spent money a little bit different that, or if you're on vacation, like this is a common one, going on vacation and spending maybe twice as much as you would on dinner because you're on vacation. You're like, oh, but I'm on vacation. It's different. It's like money is, yep, I'm seeing a lot of yes, a lot of vacations. Exactly. So this is very common. This is known as mental accounting. This is when we decide, well, it's not my day-to-day money. So it's, it's free money. It's money that I haven't technically worked for, but really it's not. And these are some things that we can do to help put the money towards something else that we want. One of the biggest ones, and again, this is a little, I wish I had an alert on the screen that I can put, add this one to your list, but naming your savings accounts, that is a really big one. When you name your savings accounts, and everything that I'm saying, this is all, based off of science. It's not just me saying everyone does this now. It's like research has been done, and naming your savings account is one of the things that by just naming your savings account, you're going to be less likely to utilize those funds for something else, because in your mind, you have already allocated that money to a specific experience. For example, if I am saving for my wedding and I put money in a wedding account, but an opportunity comes for me to spend $20 to go out to eat with my friends, I'm going to be less likely to pull the money from my wedding account to go out to dinner, because I want to have the money for the wedding experience. I don't necessarily want, it's $20. It's like, oh, why don't we, eat in? Why don't we figure something else out? Versus, let me take money out of my wedding account. Let me take money out of my travel account. Let me take money out of my child's college fund account. am less likely to do that. Let me take money away from my down payment on my house. That, now that it's been named, it has a different, I have an emotional connection to it. I'm going to be less likely to spend from that. So it's really simple. Most financial institutions do this. You can just rename your account. That way it is not just savings, checking. It is a simple thing that you can do. And if you don't already, have multiple savings accounts. You do not need to just have one. I'll speak to us at the credit union. It's very simple to just add an additional savings account. I have one for travel. I have one for one of my big financial goals. And it's easier because I'm less likely to spend from it because now that money has allocations. And then the second one is one of my favorite ones. I tend to try to do this with a lot of things in life, have mental shortcuts. The reality is, we are all very smart, we do a lot of great things, but our brains, they're overworked. They like shortcuts. They like to be lazy at times. And as a result, if we can just create a shortcut, it just makes it easier for us. So I'm going to ask again for some interactions in the questions panel or in the chat. How many of you would spend $10 for a bottle of water? Yes or no? If you went to the movies and it was $10 for a bottle of water, would you spend it? Yes or no? I love seeing this. No, no way, absolutely not. Exclamation point. No, nope. Gosh, no. Exactly. Okay. So what you just did is you have a mental shortcut. Maybe it's not $10. Maybe it's $8. Maybe it's $7. Maybe it's $5. Maybe it's $3. Maybe it's $2. Maybe it's $1. There's a point in your mind that you've already designated for. That is how much I will spend for a bottle of water, X. Using that approach, same thing, many of us may have it for parking. Like, how much would we pay for parking? How much would we pay for a hotel? Create the mental shortcuts for unexpected money as well. Meaning, if you do get a refund, have it already set up. Like, okay, I'm going to get an increase in salary. Anytime I get additional money, 10% is going to go towards debt, 40% is going to go towards saving, 10% it's at, however you want to break it down. That's going to help so that when those funds come in, you've already had a plan in place for it, and you've made the plan before the funds have come in. So it's more likely to be tied towards what those financial goals are. And then just in general, another one for budgeting, you can also have mental shortcuts as to what's the maximum you would spend on certain categories, which I could tell people here are not going to spend $10 on water, and I am with you. Neither will I. And then scarcity. I mean, we lived through this with the pandemic. We saw how when things weren't available, how many of us paid more than we probably ever thought for disinfecting supplies. Understandably, we didn't have it, so we had to. But a lot of times when there is a shortage, we are going to end up spending more. Pandemic aside, that was very, something that had not happened before to that extent. But for items, when it comes to emails that you're getting from marketing from companies, or when you're in a store and it's, buy 3, get 1 free, but you didn't need the other 3, or, this is only on sale until midnight. Well, but you didn't need it before. So a couple of different things that you could do. One of the ones that I like to do is just I unsubscribe from a lot of these emails. If I'm getting the email, that's going to be more temptation. And it's like, oh, wait, it's on sale for, I only have 24 hours. Okay, I only have 2 hours left. Especially when you put things in carts nowadays. A lot of companies will send you an email. It's like, oh, it's only good in your cart for an hour. It's like, well, I'm going to give myself 24 hours. Do I really need this? And if most of the time, when I go back to it, I'm not going to usually need it. Oh, I like this. Someone put in, I buy another item for free shipping. Yes, that's a big one. So sometimes waiting and seeing, or sometimes too, if you leave it in the cart, they might send you a coupon that will cover, so you don't have to do the free shipping. But yes, that's a big one. And just keeping in mind that these are all marketing tactics. Most items that go on sale today, they're all on a schedule. They're going to go on sale in a couple of months again. Like, it's how it works. Most items, just look at circulars, look at the emails. They're on a schedule, and just knowing when to wait so that you can get a better deal. And then this is a really one that impacts hyperbolic discounting. This is something that impacts us when it comes to saving and thinking about the future. And this is one that it's a mind shift of essentially what it is focusing more on today versus tomorrow. And I like to think of it as you are not depriving current you are giving future you more options. So instead of thinking, well, if I put aside $100 a month, that's $100 less that I have today. I think of it as that means I'm going to be a lot more than $100 richer future me. So I'm going to be able to retire earlier. I'm going to be able to do many more things by just putting aside $100 today. And this is really big when it comes to saving for retirement. So here's an example of two individuals, Iris and Lucas, and what putting aside $100 a month meant. And this is at an 8% rate of return, which stock market historically on average is about 7 to 8%. And they put the money aside towards, in this example, we said retirement, but they put aside the money. Iris did it for only 10 years. So she put $100 or $12,000 from the age 25 to 35, and then she stopped. That money was still in the account. It still grew to 200,000. Lucas decided to hold off. He waited 10 years more, but he did it for 20 more years. So he saved he saved $100 a month for 30 years. Total money that he put in was 36,000, and he ended up saving, or his money grew to 149,000. So it's a significantly less amount given how much money he put in. This isn't meant to scare anyone if you're not within the 25 to 35 year range. This is more to say that today is still better than tomorrow. This month is still better than next month, even if it's a smaller amount, because of the power of compounding interest and the benefit of putting money aside earlier. NerdWallet has a really good calculator. If you just Google NerdWallet retirement calculator, where you can just put a couple of different scenarios, you can put a couple of different amounts and when you start saving. And I just recommend, add another one to the list if you are more of a numbers person and want to see it. Just see how much of a difference it is to start a year earlier. If one of your financial goals is debt repayment, one of the things that you could do, we have different calculators. I'll put our link on our website, but there are different calculators that you can use where you can see what putting an additional maybe $10, maybe 20, whatever that could be a month, how much that can save you in total interest over the life of the loan. Use the calculator. Sometimes just seeing how, an extra $10 can save you $1,000 in the end of the loan. That's $1,000 you can use towards something else, towards another financial goal. So playing with different calculators will help with hyperbolic discounting because you can see the true value in it, and it then can help you stick to your budget a little bit more. It can help you stick to your savings because you see the dollar, like the actual benefit of doing it earlier. And then we have one of my favorites, what the heck effect, which is when we kind of we give up. And this is something that, because it happens very often, like for example, if you are on a diet is a good example, but if you are on a diet and then you had a slice of pizza, then you're like, what the heck, I might as well have the brownie too. One of the things to do is give ourselves that permission, like, yeah, that's going to happen sometimes. And yes, okay, maybe I was supposed to only spend $200 on food this month, but I spent $250. Okay, that's an opportunity. Next month, I'll spend a little bit less. But it's just acknowledging that is going to be part of the process and not to be hard on ourselves, because when we start being hard on ourselves, we're going to be less likely to stick to it. And we just have to be kind to ourselves and remember, it happens with everything we do, that we're never going to be 100% perfect, and that's okay. That is part of the process. So I know I went through a lot of different ones, and as we're starting to wrap up here, if you have any questions or maybe there was something I did not address, please put it in the chat. I do have a couple more items, but if there are any questions, please let me know so I can make sure to answer them. So what are exactly our next steps? Take that money personality quiz on NerdWallet. Know what your money personality is. As I went through the ones today, where there's some that resonated with you, that you're like, yeah, that sounds like me. So then if that's the case, what can you do to help that behavior be an asset to your personality? And then like I said, essentially ties to that, identifying those examples that you can improve on. And then the next one, which is where I'm going to ask for you, and I'm not going to say who said what, but let me know in the questions or in the chat, depending on how you can submit, what is one behavior that you want to work on in the next 7 days? Like, what is one thing, what is one action step, something that you're like, okay, based off of everything I heard today, I'm going to do X. If you wouldn't mind sharing with me, what is one thing that you have that you're going to work on in the next 7 days? That way we can all hear from each other and then can really keep ourselves accountable, because we are on a virtual platform right now. We don't know who everyone is, but at least saying it out loud, it might help us be a little bit more accountable. Or you can, text a friend afterwards and let them know, a family member. But what is one behavior that you're working on changing in the next 7 days? Okay, I see someone wrote set up appointment with retirement advisor. That's a really good one. Work on budget, exclamation. Yep, thank you. Thank you. And definitely keep those coming. I think it's always good for us to hear what we're all doing. I mentioned GreenPath, name my savings. Thank you. Yep, that's a good one. And that's a really easy one too, like that. Yeah, let's talk about a good one that's going to have a great effect, and it's just an easy one to check off the list. I mentioned them before, but I'm going to put their information in the chat again. They're a great resource. GreenPath help us with the concept for today's presentation. They are accredited financial counselors. They can help with budget, credit, student loan counseling, federal student loan counseling. If you haven't called them before, it's a great resource, just like going to a doctor for a financial checkup. It's like, for a physical checkup, you could do a financial checkup with them. It doesn't mean that you're in a bad financial situation, that you need help. It's just seeing how you're doing. It's a good to just do that checkup. But you can contact GreenPath. Someone mentioned, can DFCI employees use? Yes, you can use HBCU. So we are available to all of you and those in your households as well. You can use GreenPath. Anything that I've mentioned today is open and available to all of you. Because you are Harvard affiliates, you all have access to us at the credit union. And if you are a member, you're a member for life, even if you're no longer working at DFCI. The only time you would no longer be able to be a member is if you left DFCI, did not become a member of the credit union, and were no longer at a Harvard affiliated institution, you couldn't join. But once you join, you're a member for life unless you close your membership. I do have a very quick survey. I'm going to just put it in the chat. I will also send it to you as well so that you have access to it via email. But just let us know, how did we do? What can we improve on? This is one of many presentations that we are doing with DFCI. At the same place that you registered for this one, you can register for other workshops as well. We also have some in Spanish on our website. A lot of different information. We have blog articles. We're really here to be a resource. I do have to include a very general disclaimer. We didn't really talk about retirement other than it's good to save early, but just knowing that information is personal. So we always recommend that you speak to a certified financial counselor or a certified tax professional for specific legal or tax or investment advice. And if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to contact us at any point. We are on all of the social media channels using @myhucu. You can also email us or give us a call or visit a branch. At this time, I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to just put myself on mute in case additional questions come on. If they don't, I just want to thank you for your time and hope that in the next week or in the next couple of days. Oh, thank you. Someone just said that the seminar is not listed. I am so sorry. I am going to work, I'll send the email so that you can do that. And I apologize for that not being listed. Thank you for letting me know. So I will send that in the follow-up email so that you have it. And again, thank you for letting me know. My apologies for that. But as I said, I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, and thank you so much for joining today. And I hope that you're able to work on a couple of our money behaviors. This is something we're always all working on, myself included. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.